Hey guys, welcome back to Ultimate S&S. So today we're going to be discussing a few different things. We're going to be talking about some garden tips a little bit later. But to begin with, I wanted to address a few questions that we typically see in our live streams, and I haven't really mentioned it too much. I've been trying to figure out the best way to say this, so I think I've got it now. The question is about the H5N1 avian flu that is going around. It's been killing a lot of flocks. It's been killing a lot of the egg layers and things like that. And we're starting to see those prices go up and the food supply dwindle when it comes to poultry products. So the question is, what do I think about? Do I think it's real? Well, we do know that avian flu exists within nature. That is a fact. We also know that there is a thing called gain of function, and we know that it has very drastic effects on the population of whatever it is geared toward. We just went through a gain of function issue here recently, and I guess it's still kind of ongoing. But so what do I think? Well, yes, I think avian flu is real. I do believe that it is, this new strand of it is a gain of function, and here's why. The best way to control a population, a lot of people say religion, a lot of people say power, as far as your electricity and stuff like that. Well, understand that there wasn't always electricity around even back through history. So, and yes, you can try to control people through religion, but the most effective way is to control the food source. Not that the other ones are wrong, but this one I think is a little more effective. Controlling the food source. So, what am I talking about controlling the food source? Well, we know that lobbyists and things like that are the people who pad the pockets of politicians, whether they be local or up in the government. So what do we need to do, or what is going on with this stuff? Well, we say, okay, we need to raise our own birds. That makes sense to me. Made a lot of sense. I say that to people all the time. Well, people started doing that a couple years ago when this last gain of function deal started. And it was last year, middle of last year, there was a report that came out from some of our larger production factories that deal with chicken products, whether it be meat or eggs or turkeys, things like that. And they were expressing concern because their margin of how much money they're making was dropping out. And they finally determined that it was because more people were keeping flocks, more families were keeping chickens, more families were keeping ducks, more family were keeping turkeys and things like that. So they didn't need to go to the store and buy all those eggs. They didn't need to go and buy all that meat. And it really was hurting their bottom line. So late last year, early this year, I remember reading a report where it was some of the larger, I'm not going to name their names, but it was the large ones you see in the stores and stuff. But they were complaining about it again, saying that they were looking at Easter, hoping to be able to get a higher production of eggs and stuff, but at the rate that it was looking right now. Okay, this was late last year. They said that they didn't expect to have big sales this Easter because most people were keeping flocks, and they were concerned. Okay, this is these large corporations, that they were concerned that these chickens were not being given a life, as far as quality of life by backyard farmers. Well, I don't know if you've ever watched a video, and they're all over, YouTube. So definitely, YouTube it, Google it, whatever. But if you see the way that those animals are treated in those large factories and stuff, and to actually say that someone keeping chickens in their backyard is not giving them a quality of life, what would those companies know of quality of life? I mean, honestly, those animals are miserable. They are literally held in place and fed and pop eggs constantly to the point that they're slaughtered. That's what happens to those animals. They are not given a quality of life. A lot of these places, they'll stamp a little thing, says, oh yeah, these are free range eggs, or these are organic eggs, and it's the exact same setup. It really is. I mean, it's just messed up. It's a little bit of difference in it, but it is the same mass production type of deal. It's not part of anything. It's just a factory is all it is to them, whereas chickens in the backyard are part of the family. Your kids get to experience them. They get to help raise them. They get to interact with them. The chickens love that kind of stuff as well. And then when the day comes that chicken is finally butchered and put on the dinner table, it has had a life far better than anything that you're buying in the store. I guarantee you that 100%. So why are we seeing this avian flu now? Well, how do you restrict you and me from providing our own food to ourselves. Well, you have to make it seem like it's unsafe. So, why do I say that? Well, now their new report is that they're saying, well, the reason that this new avian flu is spreading so fast is because of backyard chicken keepers. It doesn't matter that it's not the backyard chicken keepers whose flocks are getting sick. It's the large corporations. They have biosecurity and they spend millions of dollars into this biosecurity stuff, and their flocks are getting sick. And they want to blame somebody down the road who's got chickens who doesn't even go on their property. It's not the way it works. The original avian flu that gets passed around, that is passed around by wild birds. That is not passed around by someone's chicken in the backyard who never leaves the backyard. It is passed by birds who are flying over, they're defecating and urinating as they go over, and that's how that stuff spreads. So Now, with all that having been said, let's get to the video with the gardening guys. We're going to show you a little clip here and explain what we're doing. Okay, so the fun part of gardening that everybody hates, the weeding aspect. But let me tell you, the weeding aspect is what's going to make or break your garden. You don't have to have real tall weeds to kill your garden. You need to understand that your plants, even as they're sprouting up, they're little seedlings, they do not have a very large established root base, unlike weeds. So you may see where you'll pull weeds and you get most root, but not all of it. Then a few weeks later, it grows back. It's because it has established roots. If you grab that little seedling and you pull it up, it's not coming back because you got all the roots there. But what you can do is you can give that seedling a chance to take root, and eventually as it roots will overpower the roots of the weeds, which is when that plant gets larger. So you have to really focus on trying to get as much of the root as you can with the weeds, but at the very least, at least clip the green tops, and hope that you're going to keep it clear enough. Eventually you'll be able to get all the root out, or your plant's going to get to the size where it will choke out those weeds, and that's what you want. So we're going to show you weeding up this next row, and we're going to discuss a little bit about how or at least my garden is a full circle self-sustaining deal. It is not where I'm having to go to the store and buy anything, and we're going to discuss that, guys. Yeah, so you can see I'm out there getting that corn thinned out a little bit. Now I do have several pieces where there's 2 or 3 growing in the area, and I'm aware of that. What I'm going to do is double that row over like I did with the other side of the garden and move those extra seeds so that they're spaced properly, because I'll overplant and add a row in right next to it. That way that corn can wind pollinate. Now it does not require bees to pollinate corn. Doesn't hurt either. But we're going to talk about pollination as well. But I think what I'm going to focus on right now first is, proper hoeing technique. So I've seen people out there like smacking the ground with a hoe and stuff like that. So you can do that. Typically, you want to use the corner of the hoe when you're between your rows, but you can use that hoe up on your rows as well. But you have to be careful and you have to be very precise. So here's a little clip of how you would properly do that. So all of that stuff you see me pulling up and placing in the center of the row, like all of that is actually edible. It's definitely edible for chickens. So what I do is I'll get all that stuff up, and then I come back in with a rake and I rake it up, put it in a bucket, and take it back and give it to the chickens. And when they eat it, they will convert that into a new source of fertilizer. Anything they eat, they're going to turn it to fertilizer. So now it takes a little bit longer for the chicken manure to cool than quail manure, but hey, it's not like I'm needing it right now anyway. So we're just piling up a compost pile in the back, and it's raining, and as it rains, it leaches a lot of that out into the ground. And typically what I look to see is I want to make sure that pile's not really steaming all the time. outside in the mornings is the best time to check that out when it's wet. You can get out there and turn it over. And what you'll see is the outside around that compost pile. You're going to see right around. I mean, you don't even have to see the pile because the weeds are going to get so high they're going to be just incredibly green compared to everything else in the area. And typically, when I start seeing that happen, that means it's time to, at least start rotating that stuff under, tilling it under a little bit. But I don't have a need for it right now, so probably call my cousin and let them come get them some of this chicken manure that's out here, because it looks like it's about ready to be used. It's no longer burning the area around it. So, but that's part of our sustainability program here, is having fertilizer for the garden in the form of quail or chicken manure. Now, understand, next year I have garden lime that I will throw to the yard, because as you use manure, especially if you use potash, which I will use potash to ensure that I have good roots and things as well. But and to make potash, guys, it's real easy stuff. There's not much to it. All you do is get some hardwood and burn it, and that's basically what your potash is. You can burn old chicken bones and stuff and grind that down to a powder. That's going to be a great source to get you some bone meal, some potash. But you throw your pH out a little bit over time. That's why every year I'll start and I'll till lime in to the ground. It just balances you back out, neutralizes your pH, and then you can amend it from there. And then our next step in the garden, guys, which is an important step, is pollinators. We're going to show you a little clip of our pollinators here. So why are pollinators important? Well, they pollinate. There doesn't seem to be as much information coming out in regards to bees, or honeybees in particular. There is a issue with the hives, okay? And I'm not talking about the wooden box, I'm talking about the actual hive of bees. They just completely go missing. It's not die-offs. They're having mass die-offs of honeybees, but they're actually having these swarms. They just go missing. They have no idea where they're going. And it's really stumping people. It's like, well, what's happening to them? There was a lot of medical conditions. They were going blind and stuff, and it turns out there was a lot of pesticides that was being used and sprayed on plants, and when the bee comes along, they were bringing it into their hives. So we've been effectively killing our pollinators, unfortunately. And the issue with where are they going? Well, I have an opinion on that. I think everybody has an opinion on that. But for the ones that are not mass dying off, I believe that those bees are being set back, just like we have our seed banks across this country and across the world. And they're being placed in areas where they will be there for after a disaster that I'm sure they expect to happen. We as believers should be expecting to happen, because we know that there's a day where they will go to their mountain abodes and to their dens in the ground. So they are preparing for that event, in the best way that they know how, rather than on a spiritual aspect. So I believe that's what's happening to a lot of the honeybees, guys. I could be wrong on that. But honeybees are not very hard to keep. Now, if you don't intend to keep them for honey, you don't have to ever go in that hive at all. I would recommend that you do on occasionally, but you don't have to. They've had hives that have been sitting for 10 years. But if you want the honey, you need to tend your hives. But the best thing I can think of is give your bees a good source of, good quality flowers, man. They can forage for miles out, but if you have what they need nearby, they're not going to leave as far. And then you don't have to worry about someone maybe spraying them with some kind of a killer, an agent, some kind of, whatever you want to call that stuff, a poison that they bring back to your hive and cause neurotoxicity amongst the other bees. So that would be my advice on there. You definitely want to keep your pollinators, guys. But I hope you've enjoyed the video. I got to get back out here and finish working on this garden, but I figured I'd share them tips with you a little bit. Everyone have a wonderful day.